A river of bitter water slithers across the earth. It lays in great labyrinthine loops like a slack rope, lassoing mountains and branding fields with cursive initials. Its path is so pervasive that no one can go far in life without the river eventually blocking their way. On its pale shore lies a black cup. It was carefully crafted from obsidian and set with onyx stones that gleam in the moonlight. It is filled to the brim with the river's bitter water. You will find your name on its base, written like an artist's signature. The cup was made just for you, filled just for you, and someday you must drain it to the silty dregs. That will be your darkest hour, a private hour of pain and suffering, an hour when there is only you and God. Thus in every life's play there is a reenactment of Oedipus. We cannot escape our fate any more than he, and if by some anomaly of fate one dodged their tragedy, escaped the intercepting river, and ran away from every errant shore, then they would be all the worse off. They miss out on starring in a beautiful play. But more importantly, they will never know the dearest friend they could have had, or a family that they could love eternally. Love and its sealing bands are finished in the furnaces of despair. I once traveled to just such a furnace of despair. It is called Mauthausen. It was built by the Nazis in northern Austria as a concentration camp. Prisoners of war from all over Europe were deported to Mauthausen to mine the quarries there. During its 7 years of operation, half of its prisoners died while working, about 90,000 men and women. I came to Mauthausen many years after it was shut down and turned into a memorial. I was a young man of only 20, and I came to Mauthausen to answer a question that festered like a wound. When I arrived, it was slightly humid, and the grass, which blanketed the countryside, looked greener than I had ever seen. The sky also was very blue, and the clouds, though a bit hazy, seemed to me, on the whole, healthy and well. But the walls of Mauthausen were cold and gray and bare. They jutted out of the earth like old teeth. I suppose an ignorant child could approach the walls from afar and not wonder, poetically, whether blood and bodies made the grass grow so well. But I do not believe that anyone, however ignorant or innocent, can enter the prisoners' bunkhouses and not at least smell something rotten still lingering in the summer air. The backyards of the camp hold the old stone quarry. The grass carpet wanders down a quarter-mile away from the main buildings before dropping into a wide, steep pit, at least 100 feet deep. A rough-cut stone staircase winds along its sides to the pit's floor, where the old gnawed rock is now half buried under weeds. I knew before my visit how the quarry operated. The prisoners were loaded with heavy burdens of stone, and forced to carry them up the 186 uneven steps. The guards would bet on the prisoners, that is, on who would reach the top first. With their rods, they would beat the slow and trip the fast. The latter would stumble backwards like helpless turtles, crushing their fellows as they tumbled down the steps, leaving bits of brain behind. The guards thought this was good fun. They thought it was worth a good laugh. And when a prisoner reached the top and unloaded their stone, the guards would sometimes shove them off the cliffs and watch them paint the jagged rocks red and yellow all the way down to the granite floor. And sometimes the prisoners did not need to be pushed, but leapt willingly, rather than descend into the pit once again. The guards called these parachuters and laughed some more. My grandfather was among the guards who laughed. My father disclosed it to me on my 20th birthday. Before then, I had been taught that my grandfather was a gardener in the German countryside, far from all the fighting. But as I grew older and learned more about history, the inconsistencies contained in this story became impossible to ignore. And finally, one ironically beautiful afternoon, I confronted my father and learned the truth, not just in words, but in photographs and journals and records, all locked away in a little wooden box in the back of my father's sock drawer. In one of the photos, my grandfather was caught laughing at a joke. He was charming and handsome. I bet he had a rich laugh. More than anything, that photo wounded me. and no matter how I bandaged myself, the gash would not scab. I read every book I could find on Nazi psychology. I watched interviews. I talked with cousins and friends, and I mapped out my thoughts and feelings on 1,000 pages of lined paper, but in vain. Every day my wound grew more infected, more irritable, and more frightening. And with waves of nausea, a question began to form in my heart. How much of my grandfather's awful laughter still ran through my blood? The photograph image held a power over my mind that I was helpless to defeat, unless I could counter it with something even more present and pressing on the senses. Finally, I realized what I must do. I found means to visit Austria, to visit Mauthausen. I thought to myself that if I could just touch the gnawed rock at the bottom of the pit, the real gnawed rock, if I could touch it for myself, then perhaps I would have my answer. Perhaps, I thought, the ghosts of Mauthausen would speak to me and finally bind up my wound. This was my last hope as I descended those haunted steps at Mauthausen.